had this great idea. I was going to list all the nurses in my whole life that ever influenced me and inspired me. And my committee members played that song that tells you to get off the stage, and that's not going to happen, it's over. You're not going to do that. Just write 2 sentences or 3. Thank your family. So I dedicated my dissertation to nurses. And I said, I think I ripped off the Gettysburg Address a little bit with the of, for, and by, the people of, for, and by nurses. But my dissertation was about nurses. It reflects my passion. It wasn't my first story of nursing, but it was the largest story I'd ever written and been involved in nursing. And I'm going to share some of those findings with you. And I just want to say that these are actual names of people that have influenced me. Some of them are in the room here today, which is an added challenge in presenting before them. And some of them are no longer with us, but they remain very influential every day in my practice. So here am I. I will show pictures of myself. I've narrowed it down to 1. This is me when I was a baby. I don't know, I was probably 2 or 3. I'm not in a hospital bed because I'm smiling and I'm wearing my jams. And the hospital Johnny shirts at the IWK are striped jailbird Johnny shirts. And the beds at the IWK are metal cribs. And I was never toes curled, smiling with my little baby doll at the IWK. I was screaming my head off. I was hitting nurses. I was wondering, where's my mom? Because they never let your mom in, or very rarely could she come. So I knew nurses when I was really young, and it was a horrifying experience. They were probably wonderful people, but when you're little and you're being held down in treatments and procedures, it's very scary. So if I were to tick on a survey that I knew nurses or that I was hospitalized, and somebody supposed that it was that experience that led me to be a nurse, that wouldn't have been true. Not at all. I can't stand the smell of hospitals as a patient, and I refuse to wear Johnny shirts, just to let you know. So it can be an interesting hospital stay if I'm ever hospitalized. But this wasn't the only time I was in a hospital as a child. I was in the hospital several times throughout my childhood. I'm not showing a picture of when I was an adolescent. I was 13. It's never attractive at 13, I have to tell you. It's never this cute at 13. So at 13, I was hospitalized and I was critically ill. I was in an ICU and I was near death. The thing is when you're near death at 13 too, you don't want to die, but not for the reasons that as adults we don't want to die. You don't want to die because you'll miss your junior high prom. You and your best friend were going to go to the mall, like all that sort of things. You're sort of unaware of maybe that you would have had a full life. You're thinking in the moment. So you're 13 and you're in a pediatric ICU, still wearing the striped jailbird Johnny shirts. And you're very aware of the nurses because they're there all the time. Again, parents are not there. But you don't care so much about your parents. You wish your best friend was there, but not so much your parents. But I was hooked up to machines, and I remember looking at these machines thinking, what are all these machines? What are these tubes? And what are you hanging in that tube? And where does that tube go? And that stuff goes into my blood, and then they'd hang blood. And I was like, you're going to give me someone else's blood? Like, that's gross. And then they explain that. And then a 13-year-old does not want to be bathed by a group of women who are strangers. Just not in my world. I want this to happen. So I said, well, I'm going to bath myself. Where's the bathtub? And they're like, well, no, you have to bath yourself in bed. Again, this really influenced the type of nurse that I was. People will say my patients were dirty, and I will say that I just chose not to bath them every 4 hours in the ICU. But I remember I knocked off a lead, and then I flatlined, and then I was screaming. And they were really tolerant of me, but they explained to me that you don't get advance warning of death, and that you actually are not. This does not mean imminent death. You knocked off a lead. And then they explained to me what all the blips meant. And then they explained to me why there were 2 numbers for blood pressure and 1 for pulse. And they explained everything. So you're getting the picture that I was so annoying to these nurses, right? But they didn't treat me like that. They answered every question. Every question. And I thought, oh my God, they are the most brilliant people. And I wonder how they get to know all this. And they said they went to nursing school and they were interested in sciences and math. And I I thought, wow, I don't know of anybody who's smarter than these women. And then, as I was doing my PhD, I had to write my own career choice story, because it's the ethics of it. I'm asking people to share with me, why would you want to be a nurse? And then I thought, why did I want to be a nurse? And when I went back and thought about everything I knew about nursing, I thought, you know what? That nurse also made me feel good because she knew that I didn't like the oxygen mask because it gave me blemishes. And she gave me alcohol swabs, and she gave me a stack of them to bring to my friends so they could get rid of their blemishes too. And when I went out on the floor, I got transferred out of the unit, the first thing the nurse did, she did was wash my hair. And she blew it dry and gave me a little blowout. And I was so excited. So I'm 13, I've been in ICU for a long time. My hair was very greasy. And when you're 13, that matters. So that nurse knew me developmentally. She knew that would, well, she also probably thought it's not good for anybody. It doesn't look good, it has implications for nosocomial infections. I digress. But she knew me. Those nurses knew me. They were brilliant in many ways. So there's critical thinking, and there's also compassion there. So I've been a nurse for 20 years because I knew nursing well. When I went to nursing school, they actually interviewed you upon admission to make sure that you were suitable, I guess. And when they interviewed me, they said to me, how do you know so much about what nurses do? Because, I was a nerd, I showed up, and I had a list. And they said, what do you think nurses do? And most questions I answered at 17 were, I don't know. But that one, I rhymed off everything from hanging IVs and starting IVs and catheters and blood transfusions and turning and everything. So they were quite impressed about how much I knew about nursing. So I chose to be one. And I entered at a time when there just weren't any jobs. And there wasn't a job for me when I graduated in the early 90s. So I've been a nurse for 20 years, and these are all the things I've done. So it didn't end for me the minute I graduated and they didn't have a job. I'm not going to gloss over the fact that that wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. But I was 21, and I didn't really ever think that I'd have a pension. I wasn't thinking about pensions. I was privileged enough that I had worked and saved money, and I could afford my education, so I didn't have a lot of debt when I exited school. I was amazed, actually. I remember how much I was making as a nurse, and compared to my other part-time jobs. And it was a thrilling time for me, but still scary. I don't have a job. Wow, that's strange. Who doesn't have a job? Most of my friends flew away to be in the British Virgin Islands or Florida, or it was really the time of travel nursing, so everybody traveled. And I was a homebody, so I stayed here. And one of the things was, though, they had float pools then. And when they explained to me what a float pool was and that they would hire me casual, but I got to work full-time. So again, I'm thinking, well, I get to work full-time, so I get a full-time paycheck. And but you float around places. And I was like, oh, that's kind of what I did in nursing school. So, okay, I can do that. And you know what I found? And again, not to gloss over, I was sad I didn't have a full-time job. But whenever I floated to a new place, people were really excited to see me. First off, because someone called in sick, and they were short on staff. And then when you show up and you're like, hi, I'm the float they sent, and then they're so relieved. Then they find out you're a new grad, and maybe their excitement is tempered slightly, but still, you're a brain, and your hands, and feet, your body, and they will use you. And you know what else? They don't assume you know where things are. They don't necessarily assume that you know the specialty area you're working in. So they were actually nicer to me than what I had heard other people experience. So I have to say, 20 years later, and Janet Hazelton's in the room, and she finds that sometimes I do present things through rose-colored glasses. And I said to her this morning, Janet, I'm not going to say it was all good, but on hindsight, looking back, this list, not the list that says Princess Ballerina Doctor Lawyer, but the other list, that's my list. Those are all the things I got to be in nursing. When I graduated, and because I wasn't afraid of ICUs, and honestly it was just that I wasn't afraid of ICUs, they put me in an ICU float pool because I didn't freak out at the sight of ventilators and monitors and drips and inotropes and all of the tubes and wires around people in ICU. I had been that person in ICU. But it really, for me, opened up an opportunity for me to actually have more nursing school. So I went to places and thought, yeah, I don't want to do that. And, oh, I really like it here. Or, these people aren't so happy. And so it got me to test out different things. So when I look at my list of all the things that I have been, you know, it might not make sense to you to look and say, oh, Sherry started out as a cardiovascular nurse, or in cardiovascular and critical care. I love the heart. That goes back to the nurses explaining the heart to me. It was something that they made a 13-year-old understand. It made sense to me, that system. So I gravitated there. In 4th year in nursing school, when I had the opportunity to pick my community health nursing placement, I picked it with the Heart and Stroke Foundation. I got to do a project in that course that ended up, when I moved to New Brunswick several years later, I was married and moved to New Brunswick, again, no jobs. I went into a critical care setting there, and they said, you know, we think you'd be a great emerge nurse, so they put me in the emergency room as well. And I was working 2 part-time jobs, really. And I remember that I wasn't getting enough hours once, and it was Heart Month, and someone came canvassing at the door, and I thought, oh, I know the Heart and Stroke Foundation, so I called them. And I said, oh, I did this small project in community health course. And they're like, oh, we want to implement that here in New Brunswick. So I actually got to do that. It was fabulous. And it really wasn't a big deal because I had created the binder. So I just brought the binder from Halifax to Moncton. And I actually got to do this program. And so I ended up transitioning into being around in the community doing this rehab program for cardiac patients. And that led me also to being the community health nurse. I don't know, this isn't working so well for me. I guess I have to hold it up here. But so you can see about halfway down, community health. So how did I get to be a community health nurse? Interestingly, in New Brunswick, if you're an emergency room nurse, that's how you get to be a community health nurse, which is phenomenal. Because they have this extramural hospital, and it's the most fabulous model, love the model. And basically, it's like a hospital in the community. And because you're out in the community with a little bag in your car, you have to be really on your toes. You have to triage well. You have great triage skills. And I'm going to talk about this later on. But when I worked in the emergency room, triage was the most advanced position you could have there for a reason. You had to graduate to be a triage nurse. You had to be there so long that you could tell when people were walking in if they were a jellyfish sting or if they were going to infarct any moment, you know. So just by looking at them, smelling them, seeing the way they parked their car, I mean, it was just amazing the skills these triage nurses had. So that opened up the door for community health. I went on to teach at Dal. I went back to do my master's, so I was teaching and doing research for my profs, the ones that really inspired me. I thought, wow, I want to be you when I grow up. And then, can I help you? Can I be involved in what you're doing? So it all opened up doors. Each one opened up another door for me. So I got to be all these great things. And some of them were a lot of work, but weren't fabulous, and so I moved on.